Hello Penguinauts, I'm the Bearded Penguin and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program Fall of Kerbin. Now Tape didn't hit us particularly hard last turn, and with the World War I era coming to a close, it's time for one final push into Kerthenia. This has taken the form of Operation Trident, a three-pronged invasion into Tape's lands. We're launching 2 coastal invasions and 1 land invasion through Tape's northern forward operating base. Yes, we're assaulting it for the umpteenth time, yet hopefully the last time. Now there are 3 heavy tanks defending it, 2 with 37 mils and crucially 1 with a 3-inch gun, and that's a 4.5 kilometer range, much bigger than any of the ranges on our guns, so we can't actually get any return fire on it. It just has complete free reign over us. As you see, it gets pretty damn close to some of our light tanks there. If Tape had actually 3 3-inch guns, I think we would have just been decimated before we could even get anywhere near. Thankfully though, he only has the 1, and at this extreme range it's wildly inaccurate, so our 37 mils just about managed to get into range and we opened fire. Our light tanks were absolutely useless in this engagement. Those 20 mils on the light tanks only have about a 2.5 kilometer range, so at this sort of extreme range it's only the 37 mils on the heavy tanks that are in between us and getting completely obliterated before we can get any return fire off. That 3-inch gun, it really is providing some problems. Now the 3-inch, it's a high explosive shell, so if it gets through the armor of a heavy tank, it will blow it to smithereens, but if it hits it on the outside, it's more than enough to flip it over as well. But when it comes to actually shredding armor, we found that the 20 mils and the 37 mils are actually far more effective at that. But of course the 20 mils have to be pretty damn close to be effective, and these 37 mils are really damn inaccurate, although their pretty rapid fire rate kind of makes up for it. But the 3-inch is the biggest threat here, and as you see, the tank that I'm currently controlling, that's what we're homing in on. We're trying to kill it as soon as possible, because I know that as soon as we get to about 3 kilometers, its accuracy is going to skyrocket, it's going to zero in on us, and it's going to absolutely destroy our heavy tanks. And once our heavy tanks are gone, we have got nothing that we can use until we get close enough to use those 20 mils. As you see, some of those 3 inches coming pretty damn close to our tanks, and then one of our heavy tanks gets hit. Unfortunately, it gets flipped over, but it can still fire. And thankfully, we've managed to take out Tape's 3-inch gun. Now it's just our 2 37 mils versus another 2 37 mils. So yeah, that tank back there, it is immobilized, but it's been flipped over in a way that it can actually still fire on target. It is a sitting duck, and they are homing in on it. They have noticed that it's not moving, and they're certainly taking advantage of it. But we still have 1 tank moving, well, 4 tanks moving, only 1 effective tank moving, and still providing fire on the enemy. Now they're absolutely savaging this tank here, but since it's at such extreme range, they really can't do much damage to it. And you see this tank here, it has had some armor panels blown off, it is taking some damage, but it's persevering. And as you see, another one of Tape's tanks has taken some pretty serious hits, and it can't really last much longer. It's a few more 37mm shots whacking into it, and it really cannot last for long at all. I think it's just about now it goes up and it stops resisting and we take it out. Now it's on to final focus onto the final tank, and then victory will be ours. I think the light tanks have actually helped us in just acting as cannon fodder here. They've sort of been distracting the enemy guns a little bit. It's just they're further back, they're harder to hit, and they're also faster, they're more nimble, they're moving side to side, so I guess the light tanks did do something here, but it certainly wasn't firing. Now, since our light tanks are quite a way behind our heavy tank, I decided to try and bring them up, and there's also a little ridge here, so I thought, okay, I'm going to bring my light tanks up, then we're going to charge the enemy position with our 20 mils and shred him, because these 20 mils are absolutely deadly at close range, but unfortunately they do actually have to be at close range. But this ridge is providing us a perfect opportunity to close the gap and destroy it. So we're moving in with our 3 light tanks, just trying to catch up to that heavy tank. The enemy tank is still pounding ours, but then we get some final shots in on the enemy heavy tank, and yes, it can't last much longer. Thankfully, our little tank back there that got flipped over is still firing, still persevering, and down goes the final enemy tank, and then the day is ours. Not a moment too soon, because the sun's setting, and well, night combat wouldn't be particularly effective when we certainly haven't invented night vision yet. But there we go. We haven't taken a single loss, and we have 3 supply units at our previous forward operating base, so we move all of them up and use one of them to fix up our units, get them resupplied, refueled and everything, and then we set them on this ridge here overlooking this vast plain in front of us, so Tape won't be using any more scummy tactics. We move up our 2 attackers full of bombs and 2 of our new Tetrad 2 fighters. Tape will not be retaking that forward operating base anytime soon, but we found that there was actually a prisoner of war camp right next to that forward operating base, and inside was none other than Manfred von Kerman himself. Yes, he lives, everybody! And after months of torture at the hands of the Kerthenians, I'm sure he's more than ready to get his revenge. So, this plan kind of hinges on us having air superiority, and Tape has been able to run amok with his air superiority for far too long. Well, we're going to put an end to that. Our new Tetrids fighters, I'm just going to refer to them as the TE2 now, or probably just T2, though there is a little lowercase e to differentiate it from any tanks that I launch. Yeah, we've kind of borrowed some design doctrines from the Sparrowhawk 2. Since the Tetrids 1 was just so unbelievably slow, it was practically useless. But anyway, we've decided to go on a crusade. We're going to charge through Tape's land and destroy all of his aircraft. Well, as many as we can. He's got 2 Peregrines and 1 bomber currently operational. So we're just diving in on his first Peregrine, which is squatting on our forward operating base. We tried to have a go at it with the Captain last turn, but to no avail. Actually, it was a different aircraft. He's actually swapped it with a different one now. We go straight in, but then we have a problem with our engine. Our float carburetor fails and we flood our engine, so it stops working. So we just pull out that dive just gently, because we don't actually want the engine to shut down completely. And then when we think it's running properly, we dive straight in and go straight in on this Peregrine. With 3 against 1, I don't think it really stood much of a chance. Takes a pretty big hit, it loses 2 of its wings, but it's still flying. This is a really tough little bugger to shoot down. He's really persevering to try not to die. He's flying all over the place. This thing is damn maneuverable and obviously much faster than our fighter aircraft, because of course it's got a much more powerful power plant, but it's only inevitable. You see, it's 3 against 1, fighters against an attacker. It can only hold out for so long. Sort of just playing chicken, sort of trying to charge straight at us. But I think we've blown off its tail gun, so it's not actually returning any fire. So we just run amok and just chase it down. And of course, it's actually our wingman that gets the kill there. Cheeky bugger, stealing a kill from mighty Manfred, the legend himself. But it's fine. We need to train up our wingmen anyway, because of course Manfred isn't always around. He's spent a lot of time in a prisoner of war camp. But anyway, onwards to Tape's other forward operating... Well, that was actually our forward operating base, thank you very much. But onwards to Tape's forward operating base to take out his second Peregrine. We actually fly near a bunch of his tanks and stuff, which are... a little worryingly close to the motherland. They've only got 1 more bridge to build, which is worrying, but we have nothing to destroy them this turn. We'll focus on them next turn. And we go pretty close to the Jesse Phillips and, of course, wave and inspire our brave sailors to try their best to repair the Jesse Phillips. We'll send a supply unit down there once we have naval superiority, but that isn't going to happen anytime soon. I'm sure Tape will probably just destroy it at some point, but until then, they will be standing fast. Now, it's much the same deal with this Peregrine. It's 3 against 1 and never really stood much of a chance. Tape seems to have this unsavory habit of spreading his forces really thin to try and cover as much ground as possible and, defend everything at once. Much in the same way that the French did, in the Battle of France in World War II, which certainly went very well for them. I mean, the mistake they made is they spread all of their tanks really thin, which then gives the enemy the choice of where to attack with all their forces, so you haven't got any significant forces in any one place, so they can just punch through where your line is weakest, and instead of actually conceding territory to them and building up your forces, and then when they punch through you can then attack their forces with all of your forces and then crush them, which is kind of what we're doing. We're sort of choosing where we want to attack and then attacking with all our forces at once, whereas Tape's trying to defend in the north and also trying to invade through the south, and he's never really committing to one strategy. This Peregrine does, however, put up a bit more of a fight. We don't blow off its tail gun, so it rips a chunk of wing off of one of our wingmen. Well, of course, this cannot stand. Manfred is fueled by rage. I think... No, I don't think he does get this kill. I think it's the wingman as well. I think that's Tamni Kerman, who's obviously rather a proficient pilot herself. I think Manfred's just out of practice being in a prisoner of war camp for so ridiculously long, so Tamni's just sort of helping him out. Clearly an up-and-coming ace in the Kruolan Air Force. Now, we do send that damaged fighter back home because, well, it can't really fight at full strength. It would just be a sitting duck. So we send it back home and just push onwards with Manfred and Tamni. Now, this is Tape's final aircraft. It's his bomber, the Eagle 1, and this is a massive aircraft. It's fast, it's actually pretty damn maneuverable, and it's also protected by 3 20mm emplacements. Thankfully, they're only 20mm, they're not 40mm, so they've only got a pretty short range. They're only really great against land attack. When it comes to anti-air defense, they're really not all that great. So, we actually were able to just fly in and lure out the bomber without risking any air attack. But we're not risking anything. Manfred is actually flying in close formation behind Tamni because, well, if anyone's going to bite the bullet first, it's going to be Tamni, okay? If they opened up, I wanted Tamni to go down first. But thankfully, they give in to the bait. The pilot of this bomber has some balls coming straight out after 2 fighters, one of which is the legendary Manfred von Kerbin, even though he's not actually an ace and his wingman seems to be outperforming him. Yeah, Manfred, I don't think Manfred's really going to be used much past World War One. I think we'll certainly get a new fighter race for the World War Two period. For any confusion, the World War One era ends after turn 10. So we have one more turn of World War One, and then we head straight into World War Two. Anyway, this bomber, oh my goodness, like these bombers are covered, absolutely covered in rotary 30 cals. But this bomber isn't trying to line up shots on its own. It's just evading all over the place like a freaking fighter. Just look at the maneuvers this thing's pulling. This should not be able to do these kind of maneuvers. Just look how massive this thing is. And it's almost outturning Manfred. And then it pulls a really, really tricky maneuver and blows off a chunk of his wing. Whoever is piloting this bomber, just props to whoever that pilot is. He has balls of steel going toe-to-toe and defeating 2 Kruolan fighters. He didn't even hesitate, just I thought, 20mm defenses, they're overrated, just go straight out with my 30 cals. And it's just crazy. I mean, this was a really long dogfight. This bomber is massive, and as such, it can take a huge amount of damage. I must have pumped thousands of rounds into this thing. Just look how many times we're hitting it. I mean, just not doing any damage. It's just absorbing them all. It just refuses to die. I don't know what on earth Tape feeds his pilots or what he puts in his bombers, but as you see, it does pretty much the same kind of thing, the same maneuver actually to Tammany. Clearly rather effective, just pulling up and then waiting till I pull around behind and then blowing off a chunk of wing and reducing our maneuverability considerably. And after a while, we start to run out of ammunition. We've been fighting a while. You can see the sun's going down. That's how long this dogfight's gone on. It's almost night time, and I just thought, okay, you know what? Never mind. It's time to disengage. So yes, I never actually gave them the command, not one step back. So Tammany just decided, you know what? This is a lost cause. We're just going to cut our losses and return home. She just quickly drops down to grab Manfred. We don't want him getting stuck in another prisoner of war camp, and we withdraw, unfortunately. So we lost 1 fighter, but we did. It's not a failed mission, okay? We did destroy 2 of his peregrines. Anyway, this is our southern fleet, now regrouped and also refueled and repaired. The KUS Jonas and the Bjorn Signer now part. We now have 3 cruisers, 1 battleship, and 3 destroyers, up against Tape's 5 cruisers and 1 destroyer. It should be a truly decisive battle, and if we win, we'll push onwards to Asia's front. And we're launching another amphibious landing at Osiris Fortress. We're attacking all 3 of Tape's forward bases at once. So we're doing pretty much the same thing as before. 2 Royal classes, each with a heavy tank this time, and a supply unit. They're heading straight across the Asia. They'll arrive and make landing next turn. They have a Dakka class destroyer to deal with, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And we're also attacking Osiris Fortress with the KUS Nick Smith. It's been sneaking around to the north for ages now, and finally it's in position. I'm not sure whether it'll actually survive the up and coming turn, because Tape might launch out a naval unit to attack it or whatever, but even if he does, it's serving as a distraction, because the more naval units that are in the north, the less that are in the south that we have to deal with. So provided that the naval battle goes well next turn, hopefully we'll see what happens. It's all on the shoulders of the KUS Avino and whether that battleship is actually effective. If it is, and we win, then we'll push onwards to Asia's front. We'll push with our land units and with hopefully with the KUS Nick Smith to Osiris Fortress, and our land units can push onwards from Tape's forward operating base into Valley's Guard. It's been a truly successful turn. This has been the penultimate episode of the World War I era. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.